What is good, y'all? It's your boy Mixtape Moth, and I have been in my Wu-Tang bag heavy as of late. Now, there hasn't really been a lot dropping as far as releases the past week or so, so I decided to spin back the block on some Wu-Tang group albums that I have not heard in some time. This list will not include any compilations or collectives from over the years. It will also not include the Saga Continues album, as that is not technically an official Wu-Tang group release. I know I don't make the rules on that, guys. It just is what it is. But getting right into this list, starting at number 6, I have A Diagrams, the group's fifth studio release that dropped back in 2007. So this album, it received criticism from hardcore Wu-Tang heads, those who wanted to hear members rap over punchier, aggressive production found on earlier releases. Even some Wu-Tang members publicly stated that they were unhappy with RZA's sonic direction at the time, as it was pretty clear that 8 Diagrams was the crew's most left field, most psychedelic, and most experimental album to date. But the majority of publications gave it a high enough rating for the simple fact that it took the most risks instrumentally. Interesting how that goes. But perhaps this project, it was misunderstood when it dropped. But after revisiting it the other day, I realized that there were a lot of high highs and it's not actually that bad. Tracks like the opener, Campfire, Take It Back, Rushing Elephants, Windmill, and Weak Spot, those were all traditional gritty Wu-Tang bangers that were pretty hard to hate on or dislike if you were being fair. The dedication to ODB, Life Changes, was heartfelt, and even more low-key psychedelic moments like Gun Will Go and Sunlight were still solid tracks that had that authentic Wu sound. Even the R&B infused Stick Me For My Riches kept it rugged, but there were some tracks that didn't quite hit as hard as we may have liked, like Unpredictable, Get 'Em Out Your Way, Pa, and even Wolves. Nah, maybe not Wolves. That track is weird, but I kind of like it. I don't know why. It's not like these records were bad, just strange and a bit too experimental for what a lot of fans really wanted. Perhaps the biggest gripe for some on this album was The Heart Gently Weeps, a track that did have great storytelling for show, but instrumentally, it was too abstract, too all over the place, and a lot of heads really didn't want to hear RZA go that Beatles route. Starter, though, was the one true weak track, however. But yeah, overall, this isn't a bad album looking back at it, but there were a lot of fans that weren't pleased with it. They weren't ready for these kind of sonics at the time, and it did have some tracks that just missed the mark. At number 5 is A Better Tomorrow, the Clan's 6th studio album that was released in 2014. Now, this dropped at a time when traditional New York hip-hop was trying to, I guess, regain its footing amidst the rapidly changing soundscape of the 2010s. This album had also received mixed reviews, but more so from publications than actual fans. But personally, for me, I thought it was a solid 4-mic album that was a bit slept on. Also, it was probably their most cohesive project from a production standpoint since the 2000s, and it was also one of their most mature and soulful projects to date. I still recall some Wu-Tang members, i.e. Ray, had some issues with some of the production. Because look, RZA did go the live instrumentation route on here, but I still feel that he brought it back to the essence of the Wu sound, without all the rugged samples that was. Somehow he still managed to pull it off. I say Meth was the MVP as far as flows and bars were concerned, but Raekwon, Jizza, Deck, and Capadonna all sounded great and rejuvenated. Honestly, there are times when I feel this could be like their 3rd or 4th best album. I know, crazy, right? You have some really grown man, mature tracks like A Better Tomorrow, Never Let Go, and Wu-Tang Reunion. These records just had an overtly positive tone, kind of a "we are the world" thing going on, which was a little different, but I could respect it. While there was still plenty of grimy records in effect, like Necklace, Pioneer the Frontier, Crushed Egos, Hold the Heater, and Ruckus in B minor. Ruckus and B minor have might have been one of the more underappreciated posse tracks. Looking back on it, yeah, as a whole, there weren't any real glaring weak moments to me, but I could see how some might not have liked RZA's live instrumentation feel. Although I think he did the best he possibly could, given the lack of samples, if you feel me. And at number 4, I have the W, their third offering, released back in 2000. This was their highly anticipated project after their successful double album in 97. Now, they were stars back in 1997, but in 2000, they were mega stars. And, for some context, the production trends in the industry had started to change by the year 2000, but I feel this album still stayed consistent with the sound at the time while, channeling their hardcore essence. It was generally well received, but if memory serves correct, some fans were disappointed. And there were even rumors that the clan had started to fall off. And this was also their most feature-heavy project as well. But I did enjoy how they were able to balance the darker and grittier bangers with some updated, fun, and bouncy tracks for the time period. Some highlights included the intro chamber music and careful click click. You also had Ray and Ghost doing their thing over the drumless Hollow Bone. Also in-your-face anthems like Red Bull and Do You Really Wanna, both punchy as hell. Protect Your Neck, The Jump Off was a worthy follow-up to the original. There were also reggae sounds found on records like One Blood and Ja World, although neither of which were favorites for me. Conditioner with Snoop and ODB was a fun, playful record, as well as The Monument with Busta Rhymes. And of course, there was the polarizing Gravel Pit. A track that I really could not stand when it dropped. Like, I literally hated Gravel Pit. But now looking back on it, it's honestly not bad at all. And maybe, just maybe, I like it. But overall, a very solid album. A bit of a letdown for some, no doubt, especially after their classic double album. But a good project for the time, especially since RZA's production style had changed. And it was good given the context of how the clan started to really branch out even more into their own lanes as these mega stars. And at number 3, I have Iron Flag, their fourth album released back in 2001, shortly after the W. When Iron Flag dropped, I recall vividly feeling that it wasn't perfect, but many songs did have high replay value. I mean, there were bangers on here. And after having revisited it the other day, I still found it to be one of their most enjoyable group albums post 2000. Mainly because it was straightforward, punchy, and just a quick listen at under the hour mark. It had those raw, in-your-face anthems, but it also incorporated some modern elements, all the while not veering from their original formula. A track like In the Hood was an explosive opener that kept that energy high. Rules was funky, bass heavy, and flavorful. And for some reason, I like Chrome Wheels. Sure, it had that Bobby Digital throwaway appeal, but catchy nonetheless. Soul Power had that blaxploitation energy, which I dug, but overall it wasn't a favorite song. However, Uzi, Pinky Ring, that was an instant highlight. One of These Days was a strong, soulful record that I felt was slept on with Ray as the MVP. Y'all Been Warned was a downright gutter mixtape anthem with that cold beat. The beat alone was one of their hardest during this time period. Even that G-Unit freestyle of this was insane. Babies, it was an experimental RZA produced track with great storytelling from Ray and Ghost. Also, Radioactive was a neck snapper that was hard to dislike. Now, some may not have enjoyed the more commercial sounding Back in the Game produced by the Trackmasters, but I found this to be ultra smooth. In the Jizzaverse was flames. And this album ended on a really high note with 3 RZA produced tracks: Iron Flag, The Glock, and Dashing. I don't know what it is about the Glock and Dashing that I like, but some people probably hated those tracks. Sure, this album wasn't flawless, but I still found it to be a very dope release that captured the essence of their sound as best as they probably could have in 2001. So the following two albums should really be no surprise. At number 2, I have Wu-Tang Forever, their second album that dropped in 97. It was one of the standout releases from 97 in general, which was a great year, and one of the best double albums in hip-hop history. So while some purists may have been disappointed by this, which I don't understand, but then again, some did not like Nas as it was written, but I think many will agree that this was a classic. I mean, nothing short of 4.5 mics at the lowest. It was an album that definitely lived up to its exceptionally high expectations, and it showed the Clan's evolution both from a lyrical and production standpoint. By 97, RZA's production had become more polished, more cinematic, and even incorporated some orchestral elements. Really, I feel the production was ahead of its time. As I recall, in the 2010s, thinking that some of the beats on Forever could have even fit in that era, especially some of the darker, atmospheric ones. Ray and Ghost might have been the MVPs lyrically, but trust, everyone got busy for the show. This was jam-packed with quotables, great flows, and stellar production from the RZA, Fourth Disciple, and True Master. There are honestly too many highlights to name, and really the only songs that I didn't love were Maria, Dog Shit, Black Shampoo, and The Second Coming, but they weren't bad. Yeah, at 27 tracks, the skips were minimal, and the highs were some of the highest that the group had to offer, and was a really polished transition from their rugged 93 debut. And obviously, at the number 1 spot, I have Enter the 36 Chambers, their debut album from 93 that shook up the hip-hop landscape and left an everlasting imprint on East Coast hip-hop. It's an iconic, landmark, colossal release, a Smithsonian hip-hop album in a vein similar to universal classics like Low End Theory, Illmatic, The Chronic, Doggy Style, and Get Rich or Die Trying. And as cliche as it may sound, there was nothing that sounded like this when it dropped. Nothing. Not even close. You had raw, relentless flows from 9 lyrical swordsmen over grimy lo-fi samples and basement drums from the Abbott. It's the definition of unadulterated, gritty, and creative hip-hop with a big emphasis on creative. There were no skips, no flaws, just lightning in a bottle that birthed a whole movement. So yeah, those were the Wu-Tang group albums ranked worst to best. Now, I'm sure most would agree that the first 2 albums were classics, mega classics, but I did find it tricky to rank these albums after their 97 release. What I found was that each of these albums shared quite a lot in common. They all had their great songs for sure, and were overall pretty good. But they each had a couple of questionable songs or records that just missed the mark. And to top it off, there was that general consensus from fans that these albums were just never as good as their 90s releases. So honestly, I feel that the albums in the numbers 3 through 6 ranking spots could be put in any order. I will say though, personally for me, that A Better Tomorrow might have been the sleeper album post 2000. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'm signing out, but as always, it's peace and blessings. Group Wu-Tang albums ranked